do you expect the trends, the upswing that we're seeing in some of these categories to continue throughout the year, or are you anticipating, I guess, a second wave that could send these numbers in the opposite direction?
So our forecast does have a continued recovery. So we recover to where we were before the pandemic. That takes over another year, so the middle of 2022, and then we go from recovery to expansion. But our forecast allows for the possibility of seasonal resurgences of the virus. There's going to be regional variation, and I think we see that now. Including some of the states that have reopened, sooner, facing challenges and pausing or going in reverse in some ways. So we do take that into account and allow for it. On the whole, we have a continued upward trend in the economy, even with some ups and downs.
One thing that really jumped out at me, and Chase alluded to this, as a consumer of CBO reports for 30 years or so, is the assumptions that you had to make here about social distancing. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what we were just talking about. But, regular economic forecasting about economic activity and responses to it are things that CBO would normally be used to doing, even in difficult circumstances. But this is a totally different concept of social distancing. And so you'd have to make a decision about the extent of people socially distancing, and then the economic impact of that social distancing, how that would have, and eventually feeding back into the budget, which strikes me as a very complicated thing, and probably something that you didn't have, in a drawer somewhere, a memo from Alice Rivlin saying, here's how you score social distancing. So could you sort of go through what the CBO's process was and is, and it's probably ongoing, in that whole social distancing concept?
Yeah, I can. And the way you've laid it out maps very well into our process. And, Alice Rivlin, who founded the agency and who died just over a year ago, so much of what she put in place still is going on at CBO, right? We're nonpartisan. We don't put forward policy recommendations. The structure, the culture of the agency is still very much from her. But she didn't leave us a memo, as you said, on this situation. So I'll give you a couple of things we've done. First, we have a virus group within the agency that draws on analysts from across different divisions within the agency, with expertise in epidemiology, in macro and micro, and healthcare expertise. So trying to look at various models and understand the possible ways in which the pandemic could proceed, and then they generate a social distancing parameter, which then, as you said, affects our macro outlook. And what's been interesting is to see how the effect of social distancing on the economy depends on actions taken by policymakers and various governors and advice from CDC and so on. But importantly, it depends on the reactions of individuals, of families, of businesses. And that's what the latest research is indicating. So we're looking at both of these. We're looking at what is the outcome of social distancing. And then, as you said, it feeds into the economy, right? It feeds into our macro projection. We take into account the effects of the legislation that's been enacted. We try to have a view of what's going on in the rest of the world, since, of course, the pandemic is global, and what will happen in other countries affects our economy as well. And then, as you said, feed that, the economics into the fiscal categories, spending and revenue, and then into the budget. And just one last word, in each of these steps, the uncertainty is just tremendous, including the last one, right? We have a pretty good sense of how the categories of the budget respond to the economy in normal times, but this is a different situation. And how will state and local governments respond to the revenue hits they've been taking? It's just hard to it's hard to know what will happen with teachers, with schools. Will they reopen? Will they be in person? It's just hard to know. How does that feed back into people's ability to go to work? And so those are just some of the many uncertainties.